Welcome to Food for Thought, where my aim is to inspire, empower, and enable you to live vegan, joyfully, healthfully, and deliciously. Today's episode is Vegan Purity, the Problems and Pitfalls. You know me, I love my alliteration. Before we begin, my name is Patrick-Goudreau. You can find me at joyfulvegan.com. You can find me on social media, and you can find my books wherever books are sold. You can join me in my online vegan cooking classes or in my vegan trips around the world. This podcast is listener supported, so if it's something you value and you'd like to enjoy some perks, just head over to patreon.com/ColleenPatrick-Goudreau to become a supporter today at your chosen level. You can also just go to joyfulvegan.com and click on the donate or support button. Thank you so much in advance for supporting this podcast, for subscribing to it, and for listening to it. And thanks for leaving ratings and reviews. It all really makes a huge difference. Really exciting news. The New York Times recently ran an article about vegan travel called Vegan Travel. It's not fringe anymore, which of course we already knew. It's not fringe. We've actually been paving the way through the joyful vegan trips I've been hosting, and of course through all the episodes I've done on this podcast, traveling anywhere around the world and where you'd find vegan options. The really awesome thing is that my partners Bridie and Seb at World Vegan Travel were featured in the article, and one of our travelers, Leslie, who joined us for one of our joyful vegan trips to Alsace, France, was quoted. It's just fantastic. So check that out. If you don't subscribe to the New York Times, just drop me a line because I can send you a PDF of it so you can read it and share it with others. So on that note, I would really encourage you to go over to joyfulvegantrips.com to experience the best of vegan travel, to experience these once-in-a-lifetime adventures such as seeing mountain gorillas in the bamboo forests of northern Rwanda and the chimpanzees in the rainforest of southern Rwanda and everything in between in this gorgeous, gorgeous country. Check out our November 2022 Joyful Vegan Rwanda trip at joyfulvegantrips.com and our Tuscany June 2022 trip. These trips are filling up, by the way, because of this New York Times article, which is fantastic. We've gotten a lot of interest and a lot of inquiries and some signups. So just make sure you head over to joyfulvegantrips.com. We are certain these trips will fill because we're coming out of COVID and because people are itching to travel and do it safely. And we take that very seriously, and because of the interest in the trips from the New York Times article. So don't miss out. All of the information you need is at joyfulvegantrips.com. So hi, everyone. I hope you're doing fabulously well. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback and your thoughts about the podcast episode called Plant-Based Options in Fast Food Restaurants Not Suitable for Vegans? ? When I wrote and recorded that episode, I knew that I was going to have a follow-up episode because of all of the comments and questions I was seeing in relation to this topic. And I knew I'd have more to say. And I didn't want that first episode to be longer than the hour it already was. So let's address some additional aspects of what it means to be vegan, what I mean when I talk about vegan purity, what it means to be vegan and eat at non-vegan restaurants, including fast food chains, including when the plant-based options are cooked on the same grill or in the same oil as animal-based meat. Let's take a look at the questions and comments I've received and use that as a jumping off point to talk more about this. So let's start with a question from podcast listener and Facebook follower Esther. Esther wrote the following, quote, "So this episode," referring to that episode, "did great at making the point that vegan options at places like KFC are good for the animals. It didn't seem like you really addressed whether eating them is suitable for vegans, though. I know my opinions, but I would like to hear your thoughts on A, whether the cross-contamination makes them not vegan, i.e., it's good for animals that the options are there for meat eaters, but they're still not for us, and B, whether buying them is supporting KFC and therefore supporting killing animals, etc. So buying them is not vegan. Those would be my two questions for you to address in part 2. Thank you, Esther, for that. I really appreciate it. Very thorough. As I said to Esther in my Facebook response, I thought those questions were answered in part 1, but perhaps they weren't clear enough. So I don't mind clarifying here. And in order to do so, let's unpack Esther's questions. Number 1, it didn't seem like you really addressed whether eating them is suitable for vegans. So I did say to Esther in my response that I thought I clarified that it's suitable for this vegan to eat plant-based options at fast food restaurants, and that should be enough. Because as I said at the end of that episode, it's really up to each individual person, vegan, what their own comfort level is. There is no vegan overlord. These aren't dietary laws like kashrut in Judaism, right? Kashrut being the set of dietary laws dealing with the foods that Jews are permitted to eat and how those foods must be prepared according to Jewish law. That's not what veganism is about. But some people talk about it like it is, like it's about following a set of dietary laws. And I've talked about this many times in this podcast, in Food for Thought podcast, in the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, in my books, etc., about the fact that everyone decides for themselves where they draw that line, where they draw the vegan line, right? When it comes to living vegan in a non-vegan world. Now, I know there are some vegans who would say, you don't get to decide the line. If you decide the line, then you're not really vegan, right? Vegan means not using animals at all. And that goes for anything, any process, any business, any person that uses animals. It's very clear. It's very simple. There is a vegan line. And if you're deciding where that line moves, then that's not vegan. Now, I'm loosely quoting what I think reflects this perspective. And to that perspective, I would say there are gray areas. Even though that perspective makes it sound like it's black and white. I don't agree that it's black and white. Take anything from plant-based foods like peanut butter, for instance, being processed on the same manufacturing equipment as dairy, or to the fact that animal bones are sometimes used to filter water in municipal water processing plants, or for bleaching white sugar during sugar refining, or any number of examples like that do reflect the gray areas in the world. The problem is that it's talked about as a vegan issue. The problem isn't that vegans aren't vegan if they eat peanut butter, drink water, or eat sugar that had some remote contact with animal products. That's not the problem. The problem is that animal products are used because so many billions of animals are slaughtered every year, and it's cheap to use slaughterhouse waste as filler and processing agents. The focus needs to remain on the fact that billions of animals are brought into this world only to be killed. But unfortunately, the focus time and again is on purity. Just using this topic as an example, the majority of the comments and questions I received were about whether or not the chicken, the Beyond Chicken, is fried in the same oil as the animal-based fried chicken. Now, caveat, some people say that's not true, that they're cooked in the same oil as the French fries, but that's not the point. The point is I imagine executives from the meat, dairy, and egg industries cheering every time they see vegans attacking each other and arguing with each other over whether or not someone or something is vegan enough. Like, woohoo, perfect diversion. Once again, the more they argue over minutia, the less they're focused on helping people stop eating our animal products. It's perfect. We couldn't have planned it better. It seems to me that in order to eliminate the use of animal bits and bones in products and processes, time and energy should be spent on reducing the number of animals killed for meat, dairy, and eggs rather than on playing the I'm more vegan than that vegan game. The more animals who are killed, the more byproducts there are. This is all slaughterhouse waste. And the cheaper they can be sold for, because there's so many, because we kill billions every single year. The fewer animals killed, right, big picture, the fewer and more expensive the byproducts, less slaughterhouse waste, the higher the likelihood that they'll find cheaper alternatives that aren't animal-based. In other words, we need to stop focusing on the inherent imperfection of veganism and focus on making more imperfect vegans. To borrow from whoever said it, that you see this a lot in lots of different issues, that we don't need a few vegans doing it perfectly, though that's not even possible, by the way. We need a huge number of vegans doing it imperfectly, which frankly is the only way it can be done. It's the only way it can be done. We live in an imperfect world filled with gray areas. Now, while it's true that there are gray areas in terms of what's vegan or not, Esther brought up cross-contamination and supporting a restaurant that sells animal flesh and fluids. I've named some examples of gray areas. There are clear-cut lines in terms of what makes something vegan or not, and I never grapple with these lines. It's very clear to me that if someone eats animal flesh and fluids, I'd say that's not vegan. If I said I'm vegan and I eat chicken wings, that's not vegan, right? But if someone eats a plant-based option, like, something made from soy or wheat or beans or grains or what have you, I'd say that's vegan, right? If you're not eating animal flesh and fluids or ferments, animal-based meat, dairy, and eggs, it's vegan, right? Now, this isn't about purity or dietary laws. It's about doing the best we can to live compassionately. And vegan means something. It means a lot. That's why it pisses people off, because they know just the high level, just not eating meat, dairy, and eggs, not wearing fur, and other fibers, etc. Like, that means something, right? Of course it does. But it doesn't require a rule book or anyone or me telling you if something is vegan or not. It's like the Supreme Court decision, the ruling in 1973 about how to classify exactly what makes something obscene. It's often talked about regarding porn, right? One of the justices on the Supreme Court at the time wrote, "I shall not today attempt further to define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced, but I know it when I see it." And this gets to the other part of Esther's question as to whether the cross-contamination makes them not vegan, she wrote, right? i.e., it's good for animals that the options are there for meat eaters, but they're still not for us. Well, I think something being not vegan is different than something that's not for us, and different than something being suitable for vegans, right? I'm just using Esther's phrasing here. I know whether or not something is vegan when I see it. Non-animal textiles, non-animal foods, non-animal entertainment, I'm pretty clear. That's pretty clear. And in the case where there's more to it than that, when there's these gray areas like peanut butter on the same processing equipment or plant-based burgers cooked on the same grill, that's okay if it's unappealing to you, if it's gross to you, if it's something you don't want to eat. But that doesn't stop it from being plant-based, and it doesn't stop you from being vegan. It doesn't transform into an animal. The peanut butter is still peanut butter, right? The Beyond Chicken is still plant-based chicken. It doesn't become a dead chicken, and therefore you eating it, you're still vegan, right? Now, you don't want to eat it, don't eat it. Like, that's your prerogative, and that's your choice, just as it's another vegan's choice to do otherwise. The problem, as I said to Esther, is when one vegan or vegans impose that it's right or wrong, vegan or not vegan, for someone else to eat at a fast food restaurant, or any restaurant for that matter, right, that serves animal flesh and fluids, which gets to the second part of Esther's question, whether buying them and supporting KFC and therefore supporting killing animals is not vegan. Now, I think you could probably guess my thoughts there as well. If you don't want to support X company or Y company, that's your prerogative. But someone doesn't stop being vegan if they go to that restaurant. I buy from non-vegan restaurants and grocery stores and people all the time. The people I give my money to in my personal life, my dry cleaners, my cat sitters, my hairdresser, the farmers at the farmer's market where I'm buying produce, where I'm buying plants, they're either, I don't know, maybe they're vegan, maybe they're not. I don't ask before I give them my money, right? That cannot be a criterion before getting an Uber or a Lyft, right? I can't know that. And of course, again, if there are companies you want to boycott because ethically you don't want to support them, or just because you don't like the people who run them, okay, like, whatever personal reason you have, that's fine. That's up to you what companies you want to support, what people you want to support. But that's still different than saying it's not vegan to buy a bean taco at Taco Bell, or tofu sofritas from Chipotle, or Beyond Chicken from KFC. I talk about this narrowing of the definition of vegan In The Joyful Vegan, I write, if believing that it's better to eat plants rather than animals is the only thing we agree on, I'm talking about the different factions and opinions, that's enough. That's a lot. That's really what vegan means. Some vegans, however, have made it their mission to change the definition of what it means to be vegan, asserting that to be truly vegan, which would, by the way, should be just a red flag if you ever see the real vegan, true vegan comment. Just red flag. Right. Asserting that to be truly vegan, it's not enough to just forswear animal flesh fluids and fabrics. According to them, in order to be vegan, you also have to tick other boxes. And there's all different boxes. There's the boxes that say, no, if you're vegan, you're an animal activist. If you're going to identify as vegan, you have to identify as liberal, feminist, and anti-capitalist, atheist, intersectionalist, because you can't be vegan and be conservative or capitalist or religious or whatever, right? So all these different other boxes that we need to tick and say, no, if you're truly vegan, you also have to be X, right? Whatever they are, and usually these kinds of things, right? If you're truly vegan, you also don't eat or buy products from companies that are not also fair trade, palm oil free, organic, GMO free, right? So it all gets conflated into this definition of vegan, where you can add to this list patronizing a fast food restaurant, eating a plant-based food that's cooked on the same grill as animal-based food or fried in the same oil, right? Now, look, the intentions are good, and we want to inspire people to get more involved, to help stop violence against animals. We want people to be advocates. We want people to speak up, right? We want to help create connections between violence against animals and other social issues we care about. We want to inspire people to help stop violence, right? The unfortunate result, though, is a narrowing rather than a broadening of the vegan pool. As you add criteria to the definition of veganism, fewer and fewer people qualify. And by making the door through which people can walk even smaller, fewer and fewer people will cross that threshold or even want to. The number of people who meet the basic and widely understood definition of veganism is already pretty small. Do we really want to make it smaller? Right? Which is funny because so the idea of vegans who are declaring that other vegans aren't really vegan, it's like they want it to be smaller. And I talk all about the narcissism of small differences in The Joyful Vegan, right? So why do we want to make it smaller? So, my answer is I don't want to make it smaller, right? Vegan means something. And many people who look to veganism in response to their disgust over animal cruelty aren't necessarily looking to be activists or anti-capitalist or perfect vegans. They just want to do the right thing and not feel like a freak or an outsider because they don't want to eat meat, dairy, and eggs for whatever reason. So vegan means something. We know it when we see it. But as we get into these gray areas, those are lines that everybody has to draw. Some people still have leather couches. Some people have a car with leather seats. Some people just became vegan and they work in a restaurant where they cook, meat, dairy, and eggs or serve them because they're wait staff, or any number of things that are just gray areas in this imperfect world. And it's not for anyone else to decide that they're vegan or not vegan, other than the fact that they're meeting the basic criteria, which is not eating meat, dairy, and eggs, which is foreign to most people. That's already really hard or foreign to most people. As we start loading that up with other criteria, most people are not going to qualify. So that is my answer to that question. Let's move on to the next one, which I think is a really interesting question. And it goes like this. I tried the KFC Beyond Chicken and TMI, vomited it up an hour later. Do I tell non-vegans? Okay. There have been a lot of comments on my page declaring that they ate the Beyond KFC and it made them sick, the tummy ache, right, afterwards. But they're still glad it's out there. Okay, so I've seen those comments. But what I loved about this question in particular is that it's thinking about the end goal. It's thinking about what effect their actions would have on others if they shared their physiological response to the KFC fried chicken. I love that that's how it was framed. And I do have a lot of thoughts about it. So here's the deal. I eat very differently today than I ate 30 years ago or 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. What my body reacted to at any given time in my life depended on my age and my fitness level and mostly what the foundation of my diet was. And I used to eat pretty crappily. I mean, especially when I was younger, even when I was just vegetarian, which you would know if you listened to the previous episode, plant-based options in fast food restaurants. All that's to say is my taste and my tolerance for different foods have changed over the years. And today, while I don't follow any particular diet or any rules about what I eat and don't eat, the foundation of my diet, for the most part, is pretty close to eating mostly whole foods over highly processed foods, right? For example, I'm not anti-oil, but I honestly eat very little of it. I also eat very few deep fried foods, right? And who doesn't love a deep fried donut or French fries or potato chips or fried chicken, vegan fried chicken? I love those things, but I don't feel really good after eating them. Me, personally, me, Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, me, at this stage in my life, at this age, in 2022, personally, because of what my body is used to. I just don't feel great if I eat really heavy foods. There's a vegan fast food restaurant I can walk to from my house that I've never been to. And I know some of you know which one I'm talking about. I walk past it. I'm in front of it every week when I go to the farmer's market. And the line is always just around the corner. I love that they're killing it. There are other vegan restaurants in Oakland that I don't really frequent for the same reason. I just know what my body reacts to, and I don't want a tummy ache. So I eat foods I know will agree with me personally, but I would never tell someone that I feel sick or I felt sick or I vomited after eating vegan food, right? Whatever it is. Right now, I know the question was specifically about the experience at, KFC, eating the Beyond Chicken at KFC, but it's broader. It fits all of these scenarios, right? To what end? Why would I tell someone? Would I be telling them because I really think that they should be protected from eating food that might get them sick? Like, do I really think there's something wrong with the food and I want to prevent someone else from having a tummy ache or from vomiting? I don't think so. I don't think that's why, because I'd have to really believe that this was like food poisoning and that I think it's dangerous for someone to not eat it, right? I just think I think it goes to something just much more primitive, that we as humans like to share our experiences. We kind of look through the lens of our experiences, even if sharing has no bearing on the outcome or would negatively affect the outcome, right? I mean, I'm going to put my advocacy hat on, because my advocacy hat, I'm not going to share something that I think is going to hinder someone from trying what I think would be great for them to try, but, maybe personally just didn't work for me, but it doesn't mean it's not going to work for them. Right? So if I feel sick after eating something, it's not necessarily because there's something wrong with the food. It's because my body is used to eating a certain way and my system is sensitive to certain things that it's just not used to. So what would be the aim of my telling someone that I got sick after eating, name it, the Impossible Burger, the KFC Beyond Chicken, vegan chicken at a vegan fast food restaurant, right? Because that's possible too, right? If I qualify my announcement that there's a new vegan fast food restaurant or that there's a new vegan chicken option at KFC by saying, I felt sick after eating it, what is the point? I'm asking what's the point? For me, there's no point. And now that's not to say I don't share it with my husband or very good friends who are already vegan and who don't have a bias that would lead them to draw the conclusion that there's something wrong with eating at this new vegan restaurant or eating this new vegan option at whatever restaurant. A bias already exists in the minds of non-vegans who classify, especially when I always say vegan food is food you're already eating. It's fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and herbs and spices, right? But to non-vegans, when they hear vegan food, that just sounds like a different food group to them, and they see it as different. And unfortunately, when people see things as different, they usually think different means inferior. So that bias already exists in the minds of non-vegans who see vegan is different, vegan is inferior, right? And I don't want to feed that bias by saying that I got sick, I didn't really like it, right? What's more, if you're already someone who eats at KFC, like I used to, your body's pretty acclimated to heavier, fried, greasy, salty, fatty foods. Mine used to be, right? So you'll probably not have the same experience as someone who's been eating, differently. I mean, eating whole food, healthy food, whatever, for 20 years, right? Or whatever it is, right? All our bodies respond differently depending on how we're already eating. And what I know for sure is that as someone starts to eliminate animal products and eat more plant-based options, wherever they are on the spectrum of processing, they do start to make connections. And they start to say, I felt really good after eating the Beyond Burger. I didn't feel as heavy as I feel when I eat, an actual animal meat burger, a beef burger. So I tried it again the next day, and I tried it again, and I really liked it, and I'm starting to feel better. And now I want to eat healthier, and I want to try some new foods, and I want to try some new cuisines, and I want to try some more plant foods, and I want to eat a little healthier. And maybe they'll eliminate meat, dairy, and eggs altogether. It's such a common story. It's such a common story. That's their personal journey, and I don't want my personal experience, my personal reaction to get in the way of their journey and their experiences. In terms of what I, Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, eat and teach and cook and the recipes I create and share, you're still going to find me eating and making and cooking and teaching people healthier fare, right? More whole plant foods. But I'm not going to pretend that people don't eat differently than I do. As an advocate, there's my advocate hat, right? I'm going to meet people where they're at. Do I think people can eat healthier food than Beyond Chicken at KFC? Of course I do. But what I think doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is what we know to be true about human behavior, that people do not go from eating, I'll say the majority of people. I know someone here is going to say, I did. The majority of people don't go from eating KFC. If you're going to KFC, you're already someone who eats pretty heavy, fatty foods, right? To eating kale salads every day. It's a journey, and I want to be part of that journey, not a hindrance to it. I'm thinking of my early advocacy when I would have conversations with people on the street, when I was doing street TV or tabling. I don't even know why I'm saying my early advocacy. I still do it today. When I get emails from people today or questions on social media or in my 30-day vegan challenge, they would say, I don't want to be part of that, but what am I going to eat if I go to McDonald's or Burger King or KFC or fill in the blank restaurant or fast food chain with my friends? Would I be able to get something to eat in any of those places? And if I said, yeah, there's this new Beyond Chicken at KFC. It's super processed. It's not really healthy. It gave me a tummy ache. I was sick, but it's an option. Not for me. It's not for me, but it's for you. Yes. Why would I say that? Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, I wouldn't say it like that. But why wouldn't you? I see it all the time, all over social media. I cannot tell you how many vegan commenters I have seen who have said, I would never eat it. It's not for me. It's not healthy. I'm not going to eat it. It's so processed. It's not something I would ever eat, but I'm glad it's there for non-vegans. I'm glad it's there for them as a choice. Now, it sounds really generous. But I'll be honest, it rings a little arrogant to me. I'm picturing the folks who come to me, who take my 30-day vegan challenge or listen to my podcast or reach out to me for help. And they say, and this is an actual response from someone taking my 30-day vegan challenge right now, I'm doing my best to change. It's really hard. I really don't want to contribute to animal cruelty, but I also want to hang out with my friends too. Do you have suggestions for what I can eat at fast food chain restaurants? Where can I go to find out what those options are? Now, I'm thinking how it would sound if I said, yeah, there are lots of vegan options at these places. Now, I'm not going to eat any of them, but it's there. Okay, thank you for sharing, right? Or, yeah, it's pretty crappy food. I mean, you really shouldn't be eating any of that at all. Can you just go get a kale salad? I'm using kale salad. I don't know. Can you just go somewhere else? Can you go find a vegan fast food restaurant? The burgers will be healthier. I don't even know what I would say. I can't imagine saying to someone, you really shouldn't be eating it. Don't eat that. Go make a smoothie. I mean, okay, I can still tell, I'm still going to give recipes for smoothies and I'm still going to give recipes for kale salads. But at that moment, they're not asking me if I think fast food options are healthy or not. The question literally was, are there vegan options at fast food restaurants? And the answer is yes. Here they are. That's all I need to say. Yep. Here's a list of options at Denny's, at White Castle, at Pizza Hut, at Taco Bell, etc. The question is usually a starter question from someone who literally does not know the answer because they've never looked at vegan options before. Are there vegan options for me if I went to Burger King? The answer is yes. Yes, there are, right? I have gotten criticized by whatever, I'm criticized by everybody, but the commenters that criticize me for promoting unhealthy food because that's not even food. They say it's not even food, it's just chemicals. As if I should promote only smoothies and only kale, right? Here's my answer. I can encourage people to eat healthy and plant-based foods, which I do through my cooking classes and through my cookbooks and through my recipes, and I can meet people where they're at. I can raise the bar and give them the tools and resources they need to keep eating healthier and to keep kind of raising that bar, right? But that doesn't mean I'm unrealistic. And it's unrealistic to think that if I told people who already go to fast food restaurants, don't go to fast food restaurants, don't even get the vegan options at fast food restaurants, that they would say, yeah, you're right, I'm just going to go get a smoothie. They wouldn't, not the majority. That's just not what we see. Like, we know that, right? But if I just said, yeah, here are your options, and then I'm continuing to help them become just, more aware of what resources there are, and also trust that they're going to feel better and differently as they start to eat plant-based options because this is their journey and not mine, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them the resources because, again, that's my intention, is to give people the tools and resources they need to live according to their values of compassion and wellness. And many of you have heard the second part of that, which is not my values, their values, And those values might look a little different than my values at this moment in time in their lives regarding, for instance, exactly what plant-based foods to eat on the spectrum of whole foods and more highly processed foods. And that's okay because it's not my journey. I'm just a conduit along the way, and I am grateful to be that conduit. I'm grateful to be a guide. It's their journey, not mine. Which brings me to the next commonly asked question I received, which is, what did I think of it? What did I think of in this case, the KFC Beyond Fried Chicken? Did I like it? Now, of course, this could apply to any other product or scenario because I'm asked a lot what my opinion is. And so the question a lot of people were asking was, did I like it? What did I think about it? And on one hand, I want to say, well, like, compared to what? Like, compared to chicken flesh, it's awesome. I think it's awesome because I'm disgusted by chicken flesh, right? Compared to kale, I don't know. I keep using kale. I'll stop using kale. I don't know. Peanut butter, right? Compared to peanut butter, I take peanut butter. I take peanut butter any single day. So did I like it? Who cares? Who cares? My opinion, my experience of it doesn't really matter. What I think doesn't matter. Now, I understand why people are asking this. I know it's a very natural question. If a new restaurant opened or a new food truck opened or new product, in this case, comes on the market, people ask me, how is it? Did you like it? It's a totally normal question. It's an innocent question. I get it, right? But who cares? Like, we all have different likes and dislikes. I'm not a food critic, right? I'm not writing for a food magazine, right? We all have different preferences. We all have different turnoffs, right? And I don't want to deter anyone from trying it because of my experience, because of my opinion. I don't even want to plant that seed in their head, right? What if I thought it was okay? What if I thought it was mediocre? What if it did give me a tummy ache? I don't want to plant that seed in their head, right? I just don't want to. Like, if I really didn't like a vegan offering, if I didn't like that KFC, you'd know if you're a really good friend of mine who's already vegan, who doesn't have that bias, right? That we've talked about. You're my husband, you know how I feel about it, but not publicly. Like, I don't write negative reviews of vegan products. There are plenty of vegan products I don't like. You're not going to see me writing a review about them. There are plenty of vegan restaurants I've been to that I think stink. I'm not going to write about them. I'm not going to tell you about them. There are organizations, there are people, there are things that I question in this whole world and think, and I'm very opinionated, by the way, if you didn't already know that. I have opinions about everything, but I choose what I want to make public, and I choose who my audience is in terms of what I share, right? If there was a vegan restaurant, and I've had experiences of this, that I had bad experiences at, or food consistently not good, or service, or whatever it is, right? I go straight to the manager or to the owner and I tell them, especially if it's consistently bad, like if I'm like going there and right, and say to them like, here's some things you just ought to know, right? Because I want them to succeed. And my public opinion about a mediocre dish or a negative experience could have more negative consequences on the establishment I actually want to succeed. Right. But if I told them as a patron, as a supporter, as someone who wants them to succeed directly, then they can actually make improvements. Right. Now, in the case of KFC or Burger King, I want the vegan options to succeed. Sharing my opinion with KFC or Burger King, probably not going to have much of an impact. I mean, I could probably share my opinion, I guess, with Impossible or Beyond, right? Lower hanging fruit, and tell them what I think could be better, but they haven't asked. Right? Because, and no doubt, they've tested their products with test audiences who fit the profile of the people they're trying to reach. And that's not me. If you know anything about marketing, you know the first question you ask is, who is your audience? And I'm not their audience, which is fine. The audience that is going to make or break these vegan options at fast food chains is the flexitarian audience I mentioned in part 1, right? Pretty much the audience that already patronizes fast food restaurants. And while I'm not their audience, and I still want to support the existence of plant-based options at fast food restaurants, buying them is one way, but it's not the only way to support them. Another way to support them is to just get out of the way and let people know they're an option. We all have an audience these days. We all have followers. We can all spread the word on our platforms as just a resource for people to know about. No qualifiers. No, it's not healthy. It's just chemicals. It's super processed. No qualifiers. Just here's an option. No virtue signaling. I would never eat it. I don't eat that way. No virtue signaling. Just here's an option. Here's one more option in the world for you. No puritanism. No, it's not vegan because it's cooked in the same fryers as the dead chicken flesh. If you're vegan and eating it, you're not really vegan. Oh my God. No, just good old-fashioned objective information sharing. Hey, there's another way to stop eating animals. KFC now has Beyond Vegan Fried Chicken. Check it out. Or whatever you want to say. And then stop. Just stop. Just shh. I mean, I'm thinking of all of these comments I've seen from vegans who say, I'm glad it's there. I support that it's there, but I would never go to a fast food restaurant. I would never support a fast food restaurant. Okay, thanks for sharing. You don't have to go. But if you support it theoretically, like you want people to have vegan options, like you said, I support that it's there because I want people to have vegan options so they stop eating animals. Okay, that's theoretical, right? If you're morally opposed to it and you wouldn't buy something from a fast food restaurant, is there another way to support it by just not saying anything? By just sharing that it's there, that it exists, right? Just here it is, right? Because I've seen so many vegans, right, take credit for an increase in the popularity of vegan options in stores, in restaurants, in fast food chains, but then they disavow them in the next breath for any of the reasons I've already cited. They're gross, they're not healthy, they're processed, they're evil fast food corporations who are just doing it for the money. And then they decry those same corporations for not caring about vegans by not making sure that they're cooked in separate fryers. Now, again, the caveat, maybe they are cooked in the same with French fries. That's not the point. The point is, why would a company make a decision that has pretty high costs, like, separating the vegan meat from the animal meat on the grill and training all of the, thousands of employees? Why would they make a decision like that for an audience who disavows them at every turn? Why in the world would they cater to vegans when all vegans do is declare that they would never eat in a fast food establishment? It's all over social media. You can find it on anybody's page or some people's page, right? I mean, it's right there in black and white. Why? Why would they cater to vegans, right? And then the vegans say, why aren't they catering to us? Why don't they make it so that they're not on the same grill? You're not the audience. And that's fine. And you've made it clear that you're not the audience because you have made it clear, because you say it, because you share it. The point is, do your work, then step back. Do your work, then stop. Do your work, then keep quiet. These are literal quotes from the Tao Te Ching. Just do your work. There's one that says, the master does her work, then forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. Just do your work and then step back. Let people know there are vegan options in the world, then leave it there for them to decide if they want to explore them or not. Right? So those are the main questions I received, most of them having to do with cross-contamination and purity. The questions I'd rather we be asking are, will this make it easier for people to eat fewer animals? I mean, I know a lot of you, I think the majority of you know this. You care about that, you believe that, right? And we have data to demonstrate that, yes, like this will make it easier for people to eat fewer animals. Will it convince non-vegans to displace animal-based meat, at least sometimes? Yes. Yes, and we have the data to demonstrate that. These are the questions we should be asking. Will it be a stepping stone for people to become vegan? Yeah, possibly. Yep, we're all on a journey, and I want to do everything I can to help people on that journey wherever they're at, just as I needed it when I first started, right? What does it mean for the future and success of plant-based companies producing these vegan meats, milks, and cheeses? And how can I help, right? The answer is it looks like a pretty bright future, and there's lots of ways you can help, namely just getting out of the way. You can also just put it out there as a resource and just get out of the way, right? Right? So asking the question, how can I help? In ways other than just buying them, eating them, going to that restaurant. There's plenty of ways you can support it without actually buying it. Any of these products, any of them, regardless of who's selling them, right? And what does it mean for the future and success of animal meat companies, seeing that there's money to be made in plant-based offerings? What does it mean for that? It means a lot. And other companies are watching. They're watching very closely, right? And I do talk about this issue in the episode called Buying In or Selling Out. It's the episode in which I talked about animal-based meat, dairy, and egg companies buying stock in or purchasing vegan companies, right? So I talk about that in that episode. And ultimately the question is, will the domination of plant-based meat, dairy, and eggs happen as quickly as we want it to and be as perfect as we want it to be? No, never. But let's not let perfection be the enemy of the good. And there's so much good. And I hope you join me in celebrating the good and sharing the good for the animals. This is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening.